We're the Stephen Queens. I'm Bella.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm Ashley.
Thank you guys for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about Tucker and Dale versus Evil. But first, we would like to introduce a new segment that we're going to be including called Spill the Tea. So in this segment, what we're going to do is just catch up with y'all a little bit and talk a little bit about what's been going on in our lives so you can get to know us a little bit better. So Bella, what's been going on with you this week?
Oh boy. Well, the most exciting thing that has probably happened is I ordered cookies from a local bakery called Patty Cake Bakery. Shout out to them. And I'm going to pick up my cookies tomorrow. That's not as exciting as I'd like it to be, but for me, in a pandemic, that's pretty darn exciting.
It is exciting, though, because they do gluten-free and vegan cookies, and those are really hard to find. Especially, like, Columbus is really great with vegan options, but it's really hard to find vegan and gluten-free cookies together. So I think that's pretty exciting.
That
Yes.
sounds delicious.
They accommodate very well, so I'm extremely excited.
Nice. And Bella, what's your drink of choice today?
Today, I'm having a seltzer water. I can't pronounce, what is it, Pellegrino? Is that right?
San Pellegrino, I think.
Pellegrino, but it's a blood orange and black raspberry.
Ooh.
It's not bad.
Intriguing. All right, Ashley, what about you this week?
Well, so far nothing big, but tomorrow I'm taking my Nana out shopping for some clothes and some art supplies because she likes
Aw.
drawing. And then tomorrow evening, my boyfriend Nate gets into town. And then Friday, we're going to go to a pumpkin patch and pick some pumpkins and carve them because neither of us have done that in a really long time. So I'm excited for that.
Aw, that'll be fun.
Yay. I love all the spooky season activities. Okay, so this is Shannon speaking. My week has just been filled with online teaching, which I love, but I can't wait to see my kiddos hopefully soon. And what else have I been doing this week? Honestly, just living the best life. Went out for Taco Tuesday, got tacos and 33-cent margaritas, so you can't really go wrong with that. That was my highlight of my week.
Shannon, what are you drinking?
What am I drinking? I'm drinking Trader Joe's turmeric and ginger herbal tea.
Yum! Love Trader Joe's. And I am drinking, so we mentioned her on a Hereditary podcast. Our friend Caroline, shout out to Caroline, got me this really awesome cider from Rhode Island because that's where she lives. It's called, so sorry, it's not a tea, it's a cider. I'm probably going to be drinking lots of tea and alcohol. But it's called, it's called Down East Original Blend. It's really good. Shout out to Rhode Island. You make really good cider.
Wow, that sounds delicious. Also, we are not paid to promote that, so
no.
Gave them so much business. No, just kidding.
The whole state of Rhode Island should sponsor us because just the whole state.
That sounds pretty awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to talking a little bit about Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Awesome. So, Tucker and Dale versus Evil was released in 2010 and was directed by Eli Craig, who also directed Zombieland and Little Evil. Tucker and Dale won Best Feature Film at the Alberta Film and Television Awards and Best Screenplay at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. Its genre is considered a horror comedy, and it's given a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb. A little background on the movie, in case you haven't seen it in a little while. Two lovable yet unlucky friends, Tucker and Dale, are headed to their fixer-upper vacation cabin to drink some beer, do some fishing, and have a good time. But when they run into a group of preppy college kids who assume from their looks that they must be inbred, chainsaw-wielding killers, Tucker and Dale's vacation takes a bloody yet hilarious turn for the worst that's full of bees, chainsaws, and poorly timed miscommunications. Can I just say, the guy who plays Tucker, Alan Tudyk, is my absolute favorite. Oh, it's that guy. Like, he's in so many films and movies, and every time you see him, you're like, oh, it's that guy. I know him. I've seen him from this. I mean, he was in Firefly. He was in A Knight's Tale. He was in Dodgeball. I mean, he's been in so many movies.
You know, I thought the same thing when I was watching. I was like, that guy is so, you're right. He's so familiar.
It's crazy.
I wouldn't have known his name, though, you know?
Also, I think he's a very handsome man. He plays a lot of like background characters, but I think he's a cute guy. He's very sweet and funny.
I think so too. And also, talking about both of them, Dale is just too good for this world. He's so sweet.
Both of their characters are just absolutely adorable people, which I think kind of plays into one of the topics we were going to talk about is the heavy stereotyping of this movie. It's a comedy, it's funny, it's all of that, but they really play into these stereotypes, like the preppy group of college kids. You know, they have the cool guy, the popular girl, they have like the side female character who's a little bit more promiscuous. Then you have Tucker and Dale as the country folk who are not always very bright. Things just kind of like that I thought were very interesting and how they really played into those stereotypes, and it came off really funny.
I enjoyed that too, and I thought that it was good because they didn't just stereotype one group of people. Everybody, like you just said, was stereotyped. And another thing with those stereotypes, I do find it, although this is a silly movie and it's funny, I mean, I literally laugh out loud so much during this movie. I do like that they go into that whole stereotyping thing because that's a topic that I speak on in class. So I find that it's just cool to me that a movie takes the time to, again, show that stereotypes can be harmful for everybody.
Even when they're just used as a comedic relief, it's just an interesting thing to play off of. And what's so interesting about this film is that it's so much more intelligent than we give it credit for, especially considering the main characters are considered a little bit less intelligent. It really plays off of so many different themes and tropes. It really just are so smart to me.
And it's interesting because in one scene, I believe it's where Dale and Allison are playing that trivia game. He's like, I'm not smart. I just absorb a lot of information. But like, that's what is intelligence. You're absorbing information. So I think it's also a movie about just doubting oneself and assuming that you have to conform to these stereotypes when he clearly is very bright and excels in this game.
But even if he didn't, I think it's important to note that even if somebody is less intelligent, they should still be treated with respect, right? So I think it's interesting, to even just think about that concept. Sure, he goes against that stereotype of being less intelligent, but then also, I think it's important to know even people who are quote unquote less intelligent. I don't know how much I really don't believe that just because you do well in school that you're just automatically super smart. I think people have a lot of strengths in a bunch of different areas, and there are different types of intelligence, but we need to just be able to treat everybody with respect, regardless of what our society perceives as being quote unquote smart or intelligent.
That's what I like about Allison so much, is that she's such a likable character because she likes everybody and she doesn't base her opinions off of intelligence.
And I think one big thing that I've learned growing up is that your intellect isn't based on any grades or your level of education. As you can see, she's a college student, and in my opinion, it seems Dale is a bit more aware of information and knowledge, and although Allison is a college student, he's still excelling in something that she's not capable of playing. That game isn't easy for her, where for him, this is something he knows.
Right. And something interesting, too, that we see with her character is when at the end, after they do, near the end, when they do that scene where they're drinking the tea and trying to solve the problems, we know that she's a psychology student. And even she has some self-doubt where she's like, I'm never going to be a good psychologist. I'm never going to be good at my job, all this stuff. And Dale is encouraging her and it's like, I thought you did a great job. And so they have this relationship where they're both encouraging each other. And I think that's really a cool thing to see.
I think going off of that, Shannon, which I think that makes Dale all the more lovable and relatable as a character. I mean, that's so precious. But I think that whole scene, it really adds into the whole, another theme that goes on is miscommunication and misperception. Allison in that scene literally says, all issues are stemmed from a lack of communication. And that's the whole movie. The entire movie is based off of miscommunication and misperception. You have when Tucker is cutting up the log and there just happens to be a beehive in there, and then he's running around with the chainsaw, it's flying in the air, and all of the college kids are like, oh my god, he's coming to get us. Like, no, he's running away from bees. It's this common theme of misunderstanding.
Yes, and it's so funny. Oh my gosh, but that's what makes the movie funny. I think it's just such a great sense of humor that the movie has because we see both sides. And going into that, it is using that dramatic irony where the audience knows what's happening, but the characters don't. And you just want to be like, no, this is not the situation, I swear. But again, that's what makes it funny. Especially, I mean, that part cracks me up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have even just the scene when Tucker and Dale are driving their truck back past the college kid's van, and you're in the college kid's point of view, and you look over and you see Tucker and Dale, and they look so sinister. And one of the really cool things I really like about this movie, not to get horribly off topic, is the over-the-top cinematography and color scheme of the whole movie. So many of the shots that they used are so stereotypically used in so many horror movies. For example, the car scene. How often have we watched a scary movie where the country folk are out to get the city kids and they drive past in that type of scene? Or just the color scheme in general. I think I'm going to refer to the color scheme they use as a classic campy horror noir. It's this color that you can't really put your finger on, but how many times have you seen it in a horror movie? And it just adds to that whole level of making you, the viewer, see both sides and just see the miscommunication and just laugh about it because you can see how it looks kind of scary if a guy's chasing you with a chainsaw.
Ashley, that's a really good point. Well, I think it's really interesting what you said about, first of all, the classic campy, noir. I never would have put my finger on that. That's really cool. But also, just in general, like you said, those, I guess, themes that we see in other horror movies, they really do play off of that. And even there were some scenes in this movie that I thought reminded me, and tell me if you think this is way off, but for some reason it was reminding me of the Scream TV show.
So I'm horribly embarrassed to say this. As someone who likes the movie Scream, I have not seen the TV show. I know I'm awful. I haven't seen it. It's on my watch list. So I can't speak to that. Bella, have you seen it?
I have not seen it either.
Oh, you guys gotta watch it. You're not awful. It's just so good. I personally think it's great. And Wes Craven, before he died, actually had a part in helping create it. I thought it was really good, at least. But it had that same kind of feel. So we'll have to talk about that if you guys start watching it soon. I actually watched it, the whole series, like last October. I was binging it last October.
It's interesting you point out that it has similarities to that because I think this movie really plays on a lot of similarities with other horror movies. Like, for instance, Ashley, you were talking about the Running with the Chainsaw Massacre. Like, these are movies, or The Cabin really is very similar to Evil Dead. There's just a lot of elements of this movie that are made up, maybe not intentionally, but by other films.
It's funny you say that, Bella, because Eli Craig actually had a lot of influences from horror films. I have a list of them here that he specifically referenced as being very influential. So a whole common theme in this whole movie is a play on other very popular films. So like the group of teens, they're playing off of Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's Shrooms. There's so many different movies that have a group of kids who go on a trip or go out into the woods. And the chainsaw scene literally is a direct parody of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was his intention. It's literally a parody of it, which is so funny. Because when you first watch it, you might not pick up on it, but literally, if you look at them side by side, they have a lot of similarities that are really funny. The whole concept of the country folk or the quote-unquote hillbilly, he got that from Deliverance and a little bit of The Hills Have Eyes. And then the actual cabin in the woods, the vacation home that Tucker and Dale have. That design, so the design for the cabin was based on both Evil Dead and Wrong Turn. Eli Craig showed his production designer pictures of both cabins and said that he wanted a hybrid of both of them together. So if you look at pictures from the cabin in Evil Dead and Wrong Turn and you mash them together, you get the cabin from Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is just so funny because it literally is playing on all of these very famous horror movies that we all know and love, and we're seeing it out in front of us in a more comical spectacle.
I think that's really interesting. I wouldn't have picked up on that again.
It's almost like a more sophisticated version of what Scary Movie was trying to go for. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's a really good way to put it, Bella.
No shade on Scary Movie,
Yeah.
but that's pretty accurate. Can we also touch on what I think is really funny? In our previous episode, we talked about types of horror. So if you haven't listened to our last episode on The Conjuring, go back and listen to it. I go on a rant about that. But I think it's really interesting the type of horror that they use in this movie. I almost kind of refer to it as a slapstick gore. It's very it's like in any other situation, a guy getting stung that badly by bees would be horrifying. Or a guy running and accidentally impaling himself on a pointy log would be terrifying. But somehow in this movie, the way that they portray it is so funny.
Don't forget the guy like diving into the wood chipper. I love how I'm laughing about that, but it really is a kind of funny scene. You're like, what the?
Yeah, I think that's true. If these ways of death were put into another style, it would be seen as like very disturbing or scary. And with the way this movie is set up and the amount of comic relief, it's funny. And these aren't funny situations, but to us, the viewer, in the way that it's set up, it's funny.
Exactly. And it reminds me, again, I'm going to go off of another TV show. Have you guys seen Scream Queens?
Yes.
Okay, that TV show really, does this not remind you a little bit of that?
I can totally see it. I definitely see a little bit how they probably play off of each other.
Like there was even, I think in like the first episode of Scream Queens, like Leah Michelle's character or somebody is like buried in the ground with like just their head sticking out and somebody like runs over them or something. It's like, it's terrible. Like it's awful. But like in the show, you're like, this is so ridiculous. And it's definitely meant to be funny.
It just cracks me up. The whole concept of what I'm going to call slapstick gore. It's comical. And the way that they play things out in it. For example, the scene where Chad has the dog, like he's holding it hostage, and he's like, "You better come out here. You better release Allie, or I'm going to shoot your dog." And and Dale says, "You better not shoot my dog, or I'm going to be really, really mad."
That part is so funny. There are some really good one-liners. My favorite, sorry to my students, yes, I'm going to swear. Hear that once in a blue moon. My favorite is at the end when Dale is about to attack Chad and he goes, "Bring it on, frat bitch." And I like lose my stuff every time. I think that's so funny.
But that's what makes the movie. There are these tiny little tidbits. Like, for example, when Dale initially goes up to the college kids, he has, I believe he pronounced a scythe, like what like death
Yes.
carries when he comes to, like, get you. Like, he literally has one in his hand as he's talking to them, not realizing how scary it makes him. Or there's a scene where Chad, I believe he was smoking marijuana. He takes a hit off of his joint and then takes a puff immediately from his inhaler. Like, that little tidbit had me rolling. I was crying from laughing so hard. It's just little things like that make this movie absolute gold.
Real fast, just when he does have the scythe and Tucker's like, "Just laugh and smile and people will think you're confident." He just starts laughing like maniacally. That part, oh my gosh, I love that part. This movie is too good.
Well, because he sits there and he's like, like, I can't even do it. I can't even mimic it because it's so, like...
I wish that I had known that moment was coming in retrospect so that I could have recorded that.
Well, it's on audio forever now.
True.
Gonna make that my ringtone.
That'll be like the quacking duck ringtone. I'd be like, where's Ashley?
All right. Brief side note for everybody out there. I'm a horrible, mean friend. Shannon and I really like to...
She puts on her seat heaters without telling you in the middle of the summer so that you start overheating and wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah, so we would be driving around. I'd be driving in my car, and I had my ringtone set up as a duck quack because we watched Jersey Shore because we were basic. And every time it would quack, Shannon would be like, wow, did you hear that duck?
Okay, side note, I can't even make this sound like it was any better because it really was just that bad. Like,
Because
I was so gullible.
We were in the car getting onto the freeway. She's like, wow, did you hear that duck? It sounds really close.
I know exactly the moment you're speaking of, because then soon after that, you must have been like, wow, she's really dumb because you turned on your speed forward. And I was like, you literally told me that you do this to people. So at least I caught that one. But yeah, the duck thing was bad.
Oh, I'm a horrible friend, but I love you.
No, you're not. Hey, you tied my shoes that one time. You didn't ditch me.
So back onto the movie. And
So there's a lot of tropes that this movie plays on. And a few of my favorites are the evil hillbillies, as they are called in this movie, hillbillies, which would be Tucker and Dale, and the damsel in distress and the final girl. Allison being the damsel in distress as well as the final girl.
I thought that was interesting because you don't often see that together. Because usually when you think of a damsel in distress, you think of a very helpless damsel in distress. And when you think of a final girl, I think of like Sydney Prescott or a Lori or all these really empowered women who fight their way to the end with some luck, but a lot of successful battle moves or outsmarting the bad guy. And I don't really view Allison as necessarily having to do that.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is she's only really the damsel in distress, if you will, during the scene where she falls off that rock and goes unconscious. After that, she's very capable and very likable and smart and all the other good things that come with the final girl. So it's nice to see that play on a character.
I also think that we have like a final girl in her that is created through kindness and understanding and being nice. And honestly, I love that. I love that idea. That I think this is the only time, well, I'm sure I could think of other times I've seen this in movies, but I love that she survives or she's successful or however because of that trait specifically. And I think that really fits well with the whole how they go into stereotypes because they say, hey, if you're understanding and you're nice and you look at all sides and you try to see all perspectives, then maybe things will work out for you. Crazy concept. Maybe we should show this to politicians before they go debate things.
Yeah, like Ashley was saying, usually final girls have a lot of things that they're implementing to get them to that stage, whether it be fighting or smart tactics and stuff like that. But in this, we do see her use kindness and thoughtfulness as her method of becoming this final girl, which you're right, we don't see all that often because in other movies, like for instance, Halloween, how are you going to be nice to Michael Myers and coax him out of not killing you? You know, that's not an option. So I think that's really interesting to see in this movie.
I'd see that. I also think it's interesting how they villainize the character Chad, who in any other typical horror movie would be like the knight in shining armor. You know, in other horror films, he would be, oh, the really cute, dreamy guy that Allison fawns over. And, oh, he's so cute. And you can tell that she's just absolutely revolted by him and everything that he stands for. And I think that's such a great, fun twist that they put on it because the guys like Chad aren't always the knight in shining armor. Sometimes it's a Dale in overalls and a dirty flannel that you want.
Agreed. And also, the role that Chad plays is definitely usually the knight in shining armor, but he definitely is a Chad stereotype of frat boy. So I think that's interesting. But Also, I just have to make a side note. The part where his face is like half burned at the end and he kisses her. Oh, and then he like licks her face.
Ugh.
Oh, God. It's just so disturbing.
Yeah, I think typically that character would be, like you guys said, the knight in shining armor, but I think it shows that you don't need a knight in shining armor. Like, you can be your own knight in shining armor. You can accomplish these things without like being dependent on another person to get you out of situations.
Yeah, female empowerment. Mm.
Ooh, girl power.
That's what
Well,
we're all about.
Oh, yeah.
just individual, be an individual, be your own knight in shining armor. Doesn't matter who you are, your gender, anything like that. Like, the only person you can truly count on is yourself.
And Dale.
And Dale.
And Dale.
Hey, Dale.
No.
If we don't say hey to somebody at least once an episode, is it really even an episode?
No.
Absolutely not. That is too funny.
So, a interesting thing that I saw that was a really big part of this film, and is another reason why I think this is such an intelligently made film, is this common theme / trope that is oftentimes used in film and in theater. Again, for those who may not remember, I was a theater major. A really common theme / trope that's in theater and film is called Chekhov's gun. So for those of you who don't know, Anton Chekhov was a famous Russian playwright and short story writer known for his plays such as The Seagull and Uncle Vanya. One of his best known dramatic principles that's still used today is referred to as Chekhov's gun. Basically, what it is that, let's say, if you're in the first chapter of a book, a movie, a play, whatever, in that first chapter, if there is a rifle hanging on the wall by the second or third chapter, scene, at some point in that entertainment medium, that rifle absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging on the wall at all. So basically what it's saying is that no detail in the film is unimportant. Every single thing that's included or mentioned or in the dialogue can be crucial. It's very, very common with film nowadays. It's the things like you find your grandmother's locket and it just happens to be the key to stopping the doomsday machine. Or it's we haven't seen our brother in 5 years. And then he shows up out of nowhere. It's the key. It's something that always is going to come up and play a big role later on. And it happens at least twice in this film. So, first example, I would say, is the chamomile tea and Chad. When they're all sitting at the dinner table and Allison's trying to calm everyone down and offer everybody a tea, which, side note, that's exactly what I do when people are upset. So I feel you, Allison, on doing that. But when she offers Chad tea, he says he can't have it if it's chamomile because it'll mess with his asthma. And then somehow there just happens to be a box of chamomile tea in the barn. Very, very interesting how that just happens to happen and how Dale happens to remember that. It's the same thing with the nails in that board that keeps falling down from the ceiling. It falls down once and almost hits Tucker, and Dale blocks them out of the way, but it happened once. They mentioned it again when Allison's going to step in the wrong direction, so by the time the sheriff comes in there, or at some point in the film, it has to come down and hit someone. It just unfortunately happened to be the sheriff.
That's really interesting. I had never heard of that concept. Now I know the terminology for it because I've noticed these things before. I just never realized that there was actually a term for it. So that's interesting.
Theater major coming in handy, and they said it was a useless degree.
Not for our podcast.
Yeah, so if you are a podcaster, you should have gone to school for theater because it'll be really helpful. Well, I think we can all agree that this movie, while absolutely hilarious, is very, very intelligent in its own way. But I think it's about that time for us to move into our ratings. So, Shannon, how many crowns do you give Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
For its purpose, which is comedy horror, I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it's really funny, well done. It is what it is. It serves its purpose of making me laugh, but, not a lot of character development, not a lot of backstory. But as a comedy, I really enjoy it. So
Bella.
8 out of 10 crowns.
Bella, how about you?
I'm going to have to say 8.5 out of 10 crowns. Essentially the same thing Shannon said. I think this is just a more refined and intelligent version of what we get out of Scary Movie. Although Scary Movie does kind of go more in depth of as a storyline. So I'm going to say 8.5 out of 10 because it's a good movie. It's a good, fun, enjoyable movie.
Those are really good points. I know this is one of my favorite slapstick gore comedy films, but I think I'm going to agree with Shannon, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoy this film. I think it's really funny, but if it's substance that you're looking for and a lot of more intricate plot and dialogue, this isn't quite the film for you. I think even for me, I haven't looked into it much, but I don't think it passes the Bechdel test, which is fine. Not every film is going to, but I think it has its good moments, it's good comic relief, and it's just an overall, easy movie to put on when you're feeling under the weather. So, with that, I'm going to jump into some Ashley fun facts.
Woohoo!
So, Ashley fun fact number 1. In the scene where Tucker comes into the cabin and sees Dale and Allison playing a board game and gets all riled up about it, when he comes in and he cracks open the beer and pours it on his face to soothe the bee stings, which is comedic gold, that was actually improv. Alan Tudyk came up with the idea to pour beer on his face. That was all him, which I think is absolutely hilarious, and I think improv and coming up with that kind of comedy gold is really smart, and I really admire actors who can do that because I could not.
That's really funny.
Right? Also, another side note off of that, I watched some interviews of both Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine, who play Tucker and Dale, and I did a lot of research to make sure I could pronounce their last names correctly because I didn't want another Jonathan Demme situation on our hands. And Alan Tudyk has this really, really sad story about when he was a kid. The kids in his class would call him Alan Tudyk's.
Oh my gosh.
And he laughed it off, but
School is a cruel place sometimes.
he took it in all good credit. But now anytime I say his last name, I can't help but think of that story.
That's really funny.
So, Ashley, fun fact number 2. One of the film's strongest themes deal with stereotypes and how we perceive others. So, Eli Craig, who directed and actually was a co-writer on the script, jokingly referred to this movie as a docudrama because growing up, he and his father would go to the cabins, enjoy fishing and other what he would call backwood activities. But when Craig would watch horror classics like The Hills Have Eyes, Wrong Turn, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he noticed that the backwoods people, or the country people, were always depicted as monstrous and villainous. So he wanted to portray them as just ordinary people and even subvert their usual fear-inducing cliche. Which I think is interesting because I've always said that I will never live in the country because that's where people get murdered. So
I would never ever. I've lived in the country for a year. We'll never do it ever again. Ever.
I just thought that was really nice that he wanted to try to represent a group of people who haven't always been positively represented.
That is nice.
Fun fact number 3, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil didn't even make back its $5 million budget for its production. And this was even though it received excellent reviews. It was highly acclaimed by the American film critic Roger Ebert himself, who's usually incredibly harsh on horror films, especially slasher films. I think it's really unfortunate that it didn't make more back in the box office or in return. It's such a smart, funny movie, and $5 million really isn't that big of a budget for a film. So the fact that they didn't make it back, even though it's highly loved by a lot of the people that I know, I thought was really sad.
Aw.
Fun fact number 4, there have been talks about a sequel for years, but sadly, this has never come to fruition. According to a 2017 interview with both Alan and Tyler, there was a script written, but it wasn't deemed good enough, so they shelved it indefinitely. Both Alan and Tyler have said that they would love to reprise the characters of Tucker and Dale, but they refuse to do it unless the script is as good or better than the original, which I can highly appreciate because how many movies have gotten a god-awful sequel that we didn't need to see?
Child's Play.
Yes. Ah, that was not a good no. And my 5th and final Ashley fun fact is that the DVD for Tucker and Dale vs. Evil contains a 15-minute bonus clip called Tucker and Dale Are Evil. And it's entirely shot from the perspective of the college kids. I haven't ever watched it, but Darren from the Death Curse podcast crew says that he's seen it and that it's really great. It comes off super slashery. He really enjoys it. So at some point in my life, I want to find this and I want to watch it because I think it'd be really, really interesting.
That's awesome. I'll have to check that out.
And with that, that's a review of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil.
Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode. We throw it back to another classic that shows that a mother doesn't always know best.
Also, please go ahead and comment and follow us on our social media. So we are the Stephen Queens. Stephen, for your reference, is Stephen, like our namesake. On Instagram, we are at the Stephen Queens. On Twitter, we're at Stephen_Queens, and we're the Stephen Queens on Facebook.
Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and give your queens a shout out. We like to hear what you think. Give us a like, give us a review, subscribe. Maybe you'll be the first person on Facebook to give us a review. Will you hold that special spot? Oh, that'd be really cool.
Thanks for tuning in. This is Bella.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm Ashley. Stay creepy.